My name is Madison Crow. I'm 32. A senior financial auditor in Denver. And until that morning, I believed exhaustion was my only illness. The doctor's hands were trembling as she scrolled through my blood work. I noticed the way her fingers shook. The pause before her eyes met mine. The silence heavy enough to hum. For a moment I thought she was about to say cancer. And I was ready for that. Instead, Dr. Lila Weston stood abruptly and said, almost too quietly, "Let's talk in my office." I followed her down the hall, past the nurses who smiled like nothing was wrong, until the door closed behind us and the blinds snapped shut. She didn't sit. She turned to me with the kind of fear you only see in people who know too much. "You need to leave your house today," she whispered, her voice trembling the way her hands had. I blinked, not understanding. "What are you talking about?" I asked. And she pointed to the screen, the numbers glowing red. "These levels," she said, "aren't from food, or water, or environment. They're deliberate. You have arsenic in your system." I felt my pulse in my throat. A sharp, uneven drumbeat. "You're saying someone's been poisoning me?" She nodded once. "And it's been happening for months." 80. I wanted to laugh, to call it ridiculous. But the timeline fit too perfectly. 5 months of nausea, hair falling out, fog so thick I couldn't remember my own passwords. I whispered, "My husband makes me smoothies every morning." Her eyes didn't move. "Then that's where it's coming from. Don't refuse them. Don't change anything. Act normal. Contact the police when you're safe." She tore a blank sheet from her pad, scribbled her personal email, and pressed it into my hand. When I left the clinic, the sky over Denver was the color of tin, and my legs barely felt connected to the ground. My phone buzzed in my purse, a message from Evan. "How did the appointment go?" "Love, I made your favorite dinner. Can't wait to see you." I stared at it until the letters blurred, then typed back, "On my way." I started the car, my reflection pale in the mirror, and said out loud, "He's waiting with dinner." And I'm walking straight into it. When I walked into the house that night, Evan was stirring sauce on the stove, humming like nothing in the world could be wrong. He smiled over his shoulder and said, "You look pale." "Sweetheart, what did the doctor say?" I forced my voice steady. "Mild anemia. She gave me supplements." He nodded, wiping his hands. His tone soft but deliberate. "Then we'll double the spinach in your smoothies. You know, I worry when you skip breakfast." I smiled back and felt my throat tighten as I poured myself a glass of water to hide the shake in my hand. He watched me taste the lasagna, asking if it needed more salt. I said it was perfect, though the smell turned my stomach. After dinner, he mentioned rest, kissed my forehead, and told me not to overwork. When he went upstairs to shower, I emptied half the smoothie he had prepped for tomorrow into the sink, careful to rinse every trace away. The rest I would drink, enough to look convincing. By morning, my head pounded, my mouth metallic, and my stomach churned. I moved slowly, keeping my expression heavy with fatigue. "Still tired?" he asked, adjusting his tie. "The vitamins need time," I murmured, pretending to yawn. He kissed my hair and left with his briefcase, the front door closing like a final note of routine. The moment his car pulled out, I poured the rest of the smoothie down the drain and watched it swirl away. Days blurred into the same pattern, his perfect concern. My perfect performance. Each morning I drank just enough poison to keep my decline believable. Each night he brought me tea, hovering over me like a guardian angel rehearsing empathy. I learned to match his tone, to echo worry with gratitude, to hide calculation behind a weak smile. My body weakened, but my mind sharpened with every sip I didn't take. He began controlling more than my meals. "Let me handle the finances," he said one evening. "You should rest instead of balancing spreadsheets." I nodded, handing over the passwords he already knew. He said, "I'll make sure everything's paid." I said, "I know you will." The words tasted bitter. I checked our shared files later, pretending it was habit, and found a document buried in a folder marked Vacation Plans. It wasn't a trip. It was an insurance policy worth $800,000, taken out 10 months earlier. With his name written as sole beneficiary, I stared until the numbers lost meaning. The screen glowing against the dark. My reflection looked sick. And maybe it was. But not from arsenic alone. It was from realizing every breakfast, every glass of water, every gentle word had been part of the same design. And the man cooking dinner upstairs had already planned my obituary. I brought the smoothie sample to Dr. Ryde, Lila Weston, 2 days later, sealed in a container I had labeled like any other vitamin mix. She closed the door behind me, her tone low but steady as she said, "You shouldn't have come alone." I told her I didn't want to wait for an email. "I need to know what's happening to me," I said, my voice thinner than I wanted it to be. She gestured to the chair, folded her arms, and said quietly, "Tell me everything. Every symptom. Every routine. Every meal." Oh, I told her about the smoothies. About how Evan watched me take the first sip every morning before work. "He says they're healthy," I said, "and I drink them because I love him." Her expression tightened, and she asked, "Does he have access to any chemical supplies?" I answered, "He's a pharmacist. He knows compounds. Dosage. Interactions. He wouldn't need a manual." She nodded slowly. The kind of nod that isn't agreement but confirmation. "That's what I was afraid of," she said. For a moment, the room was silent except for the hum of the air vent. Then she leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "If he's dosing you, it's low and deliberate. Chronic exposure, the kind that ruins organs before it kills." I asked what that meant for me. She looked at the container on her desk and said, "It means he's not careless. It means he's planning a timeline." My throat went dry as I asked, "How long before someone dies from that?" She replied, "Depends on how long you keep pretending not to notice." Day exam. I pressed my palms against my knees to stop the shaking. "If I stop drinking, he'll know," I said, trying to keep my breath even. "Then don't stop," she answered. "Not yet. Drink enough to look consistent. But start saving samples. Keep your distance. Keep your calm." I asked, "Should I tell the police now?" And she shook her head. "Not until we have proof. Let me send this to a private toxicology lab. Once we have the report, we'll bring in Detective Karen Holt. She specializes in this kind of case." "What?" When she handed me her card, she added, "I'll email you from a private address. He can't trace it." I said, "He checks our shared accounts." She looked me in the eye and said, "Then don't use them. Don't give him a reason to change his schedule. Smile. Eat dinner. Act sick. And call me the moment you're safe." I slipped the card into my purse, feeling the weight of it more than its paper. Her voice followed me to the door. Calm, but final. "Madison, you're not crazy," she said. "You're being hunted, and you're going to have to hunt back." Okay. Detective Karen Holt emailed me from a private account 3 days later, asking to meet somewhere Evan would never think to look. We chose a cafe near the train station, crowded enough to blend in but quiet enough to hear every word. She sat across from me in a gray blazer, eyes sharp, voice even. "We can't move without evidence," she said. "We need to show motive." method, and connection. I told her I already had the first two. She raised an eyebrow and asked, "And how's your health?" I smiled faintly. "Still sick enough to keep him comfortable." 2012. I explained what Dr. Weston had done, that a toxicology report was pending. Holt listened, jotting notes on a small pad. "Good," she said. "But I want a clear trail. Financial, chemical, personal. Anything that ties his hands." I told her Evan controlled our finances, and I'd noticed missing transfers under harmless labels. "He's careful," I said. "But I'm better at math than he is." She looked impressed. "Start tracing those payments. Anything irregular goes straight to me." I nodded, feeling steadier with her measured calm cutting through the fog. At home that night, I logged into our shared banking system, keeping my face neutral as Evan scrolled through his phone beside me on the couch. He asked what I was working on, and I said, "Expense reports. Quarter-end audits." He didn't look up. "You're always working," he murmured, thumb flicking across the screen. I smiled without meaning it, my hands steady over the keyboard. When he left for the kitchen, I pulled the transactions by keyword: professional development, consulting fee, vendor invoice. The sums were small enough to look harmless, but frequent enough to form a pattern. I followed the trail to a business account listed under Crestline Industrial Supplies. Their invoices looked ordinary until I saw one dated 6 months ago, referencing materials categorized as chemical orders. The recipient line was marked confidential. My pulse kicked hard, but I stayed still. The next morning, I told Holt. "He's using a supplier's account." She leaned in, voice low. "Get me a name." I printed the statement and highlighted a signature, approved by Simone Darden. "Inventory manager." Holt wrote it down, then looked at me. "Do you know her?" I shook my head. "But I think my husband does." Asked. The following afternoon, I drove to Crestline under the pretense of meeting a client. The receptionist directed me toward the warehouse offices. Through the glass, I saw a woman in her late 20s laughing into her phone. Her tone soft, her expression too familiar. When she said, "Evan, you're terrible," I didn't need to hear the rest. I turned away before she could notice me. That night I told Holt. "He's seeing her. She works where the arsenic came from." The detective's jaw tightened. "Then she's our link. If she helped him order, she's part of the chain." I will. Back home, Evan greeted me with a kiss and asked if I'd had a long day. I said, "Just routine audits." And he smiled, believing me. My mind was already somewhere else, stacking facts into a shape that looked like truth. Dr. Weston had the lab results. Holt had the financials. Now there was a name, a voice, and a phone call that tied everything together. I poured myself water, steadying the glass as he reached to touch my arm. "You're shaking," he said softly. "Just tired," I answered, watching the reflection of his smile in the kitchen window. In its glass, I could already see the outline of the trap tightening. I met Simone Darden at a cafe near her office, a place bright enough to seem casual and quiet enough to hear the truth. When I walked in, she looked up, recognized me, and her expression hardened into something rehearsed. "You're his wife," she said flatly, stirring her coffee like she wanted to dissolve the moment. "Whatever you think you know, it's not what it looks like." I sat down across from her and replied, "Then tell me what it looks like. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like a pattern." "Is not," she scoffed, keeping her gaze on the table. "Evan said you'd come after me, that you'd make up stories." I took a folded paper from my purse and slid it toward her. "This is my toxicology report. I said. It's not a story. She glanced at the numbers. Unimpressed. You really expect me to believe he's poisoning you? I said. I don't expect anything from you, but I know where he got the arsenic. And your name is on the paperwork. She froze for a fraction of a second before saying, He said you'd forge things if it came to that. Come in. I leaned forward, keeping my voice even. He also told you to take out a life insurance policy. Didn't he? Around $500,000? For your future together. Her jaw tensed. The first crack in her defense. How did you know that? She asked quietly. Because he took one on me too. I said. 800,000. He likes to invest in dying women. She whispered. You're lying. But it came out hollow. He said you were unstable. That you imagined things. That you were dangerous. I said. He always needs his women to sound crazy. Makes the eulogy cleaner. Her hand shook when she reached for her cup. He said he was waiting for the right time to leave you. She murmured. He said you were controlling. I smiled without warmth. He said the same about you. Simone. He said you check his messages. That you're obsessed. She blinked. Confusion flickering behind her anger. That's not true. She said. Of course not. I replied. It never is. Until the funeral, I placed a copy of the insurance policy beside her coffee. Your signature looks lovely next to mine. Everyone. She stared at the documents. Her lips parting like she wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. He loves me, she said finally, almost pleading. He wouldn't. I cut her off gently. He would. And he did. You gave him access to your company's ordering account. Didn't you? He told you it was for a work project. To save money. She nodded slowly. Realization forming in fragments. I never checked what he ordered. She whispered. I thought it was medical supplies. I said. It was. Just not the kind that heal. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered. He used me. I nodded. He used us both. The only difference is I found out first. She sat back, pale and still, staring at the paper trail she hadn't known existed. What happens now? She asked. I answered. You're going to help me prove it. You'll turn over your account records. Every order. Every shipment. And you'll tell the truth when the police ask. She swallowed hard. And if I don't? I looked her in the eye. Then when they find out the poison came from your login, they'll think it was your idea. Her voice trembled. He'll destroy me, I said. He already tried. This is how you stop being his next obituary. She nodded once, then pushed the papers back toward me. I'll cooperate, she said. But you have to promise he never sees me again. I replied. That's the plan. She exhaled shakily, whispering. I thought I was special, I said. So did I. Her eyes met mine. Raw and furious now instead of frightened. Then let's ruin him, she said. And for the first time, I believed her. She gave me printed records that same evening. Her signature beside each page like a confession written in ink. I left the cafe with the folder under my arm, feeling the weight of it settle like breath after panic. When I stepped outside, the wind caught my hair, and I could almost hear his voice somewhere between memory and proof. Evan had built his lies across 2 women and 1 ledger, and now both women were ready to balance it. Detective Holt gave me a recording device small enough to disappear beneath a blouse button. Her voice measured as she said, We just need him talking. Don't force it. That evening I sat on the couch wrapped in a blanket, my face pale by design. Evan came in holding 2 mugs of tea, setting one beside me. You look worse tonight, he said softly. I kept my tone thin. It comes and goes. I was thinking about the future. In case I don't get better. His eyes flickered with something I hadn't seen before, anticipation disguised as concern. He touched my shoulder. His voice careful. Don't talk like that. Sweetheart. You'll be fine. I gave a tired laugh. I hope so. But if something happens, I want you to know I've updated the insurance policy. 800,000 should help you start over. He blinked. Almost too slowly. Then smiled faintly. That's generous. But I'd rather have you than the money. I met his gaze and said, You've always taken care of everything. It's what I love about you. He nodded, replying, I'll take care of you until the very end. A.M. I let silence hang. The kind that tempts people to fill it. He shifted closer, brushing hair from my face. You should rest. He murmured. No more worrying. I asked. You'd manage fine. Though, wouldn't you? You always do. He smiled again. That patient smile people wear when they think they've already won. You know me, he said. I always find a way. I whispered. I know. The recorder hummed between us, capturing the sound of quiet satisfaction. When he left the room, I pretended to sleep. From the hallway, I heard his voice lower. The rhythm different now, lighter, freer. She's getting weaker, he said into his phone. A few more weeks. Maybe less. Then we're free. My pulse slowed, each word slotting into place like a lock turning. I heard him laugh softly. The same laugh he used at dinner parties when people called us perfect. He added, She trusts me completely. I'll make it look peaceful. I didn't move. Not even when he ended the call and stood outside the bedroom door. He came back inside, looked at me sleeping, or what he thought was sleep, and whispered, I love you. Madison. The irony landed heavy, but I kept my breathing even. When he finally went downstairs, I sat up, turned off the recorder, and stared at the blinking light. Detective Holt had been right, he wouldn't confess. But he'd given himself away. The next morning, I transferred the audio file to a secure drive. Labeling it with the date and time, Evan brewed another smoothie in the kitchen, humming the same tune as always. And when he brought it to me with that soft, rehearsed smile, I smiled back, knowing the next sound of his voice would belong to the police. The morning of Evan's arrest looked like every other morning. I woke before sunrise, made coffee, and listened to the sound of water in the pipes as he showered upstairs. When he came down, he was humming, wearing the same gray suit he always wore on Mondays. You should rest today, he said, pouring himself a second cup. I nodded. I plan to. He kissed my forehead and said, Dinner tonight. Just us. I'll bring wine. I smiled and told him, I'll be here. He walked out the door carrying his briefcase, his voice echoing, Love you, before it shut. 20 minutes later, tires rolled over the gravel driveway. Detective Holt stepped through the doorway with 2 officers, her badge glinting against her coat. Evan was still halfway down the walkway, confused by the sight of them. Is something wrong? He asked. His voice caught between charm and calculation. Holt said evenly, Evan Crow. You're under arrest for attempted murder and insurance fraud. He laughed once, soft and quick. That's ridiculous, he said, looking past her toward me. My wife isn't well. She's confused. I answered quietly. Not anymore. He turned back to Holt, trying to regain control. There's been some mistake. I would never hurt her, she replied. We have your financial records, shipment orders, and recorded conversations confirming intent. We also have a witness ready to testify. His mouth opened and closed once before he said, "That woman is lying," Holt said. "Which one?" His eyes flickered just long enough to answer the question himself. When the cuffs clicked, he didn't resist. But his calm cracked in the smallest twitch at the corner of his mouth. I stood by the kitchen doorway holding my coffee cup, the steam fading between us. He looked at me then, his face stripped of every performance, and asked, "You set me up?" I said. "No. Evan, you built the setup. I just turned it on." Holt guided him toward the waiting car while he muttered something about lawyers. His voice hollow now. The door closed behind them, and the silence that followed felt heavier than the sound of their footsteps. Later that afternoon, Holt called to confirm he'd confessed enough to seal the case. The lab tests, the recordings, the transfer logs, everything aligned. She told me, "It's over." And I said, "I know." That night, I packed a single suitcase, leaving behind the house that still smelled of his cologne and disinfectant. I took nothing we'd bought together, only what I had brought into the marriage: my laptop, my keys, and my name. When I crossed the city limits, Denver faded into the rearview mirror like a set I'd finished performing on. I rented a small apartment in Seattle with high windows and light that stayed honest. Every morning, I cook breakfast myself: eggs and toast. No smoothies. No vitamins. No lies. I see Dr. Weston once a month for follow-up tests. And each time she smiles a little wider when she says, "You're healing." Sometimes I still expect to hear Evan's voice behind me. But when I turn, there's only quiet. The kind that feels earned. A letter from him arrived last week, his handwriting neat and deliberate. But I didn't open it. I slipped it into a drawer, next to the hard drive holding his recorded words. I don't need to read his apologies. I already have his confession. The city outside hums every morning now, steady and clean. And I breathe without counting. The man who tried to end me will spend the next 15 years behind bars, and I've decided that's long enough for me to start living again. Thank you for staying with me until the end of my story. If you believe no one should have to survive in silence, take a moment to subscribe and share where you're watching from. I read every word, every time. Your stories matter here, and they're never forgotten.